Across the Fence, on the heels of town meeting, it's time for town officer training. From regulations to record keeping, there are upcoming opportunities to help local officials do their jobs more effectively. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Town meeting is over. In cities and towns across the state, we have elected the town officers who will lead our communities. And those town officers will make appointments to our local government, positions in planning, parks, and public works. So how do town clerks, select boards, and other town officials learn to do their jobs efficiently and effectively? How do they keep up to date on new laws and regulations and still manage planning, zoning, and other town issues? Rebecca Gollin tells us about Vermont's Town Officer Education Conferences.
So I want everybody to shake the hands of the person next to you and say, "Good job. You are a valuable member of my community."
Vermont town officials come to the annual Town Officers Education Conference for training and learning opportunities. It's a chance to hear about new laws and regulations and pick up tools and strategies that help them do their jobs more effectively.
You have to keep up with the times, times are changing, the job kept changing, and you have to try to get to workshops, listen to other people's views that do the same type of work you do. It's helped me a lot over the years.
It's a very good conference. It's very educational. You meet a lot of other local officials and also local legislatures and learn about, new legislation that affects our jobs as listers. This job has changed over the years. It's much more demanding. The education offerings, you have to constantly go to keep abreast of what the new changes are.
The conference is organized by the University of Vermont Extension in partnership with several participating organizations. Attendees include town clerks and planners, listers, assessors, select board members, and other officials and local legislators.
It's a good play to network between different assessors and listers throughout the state. The Listers Forum is a great way to find out what other listers are doing throughout the state. And also, maybe I can shed some light on what we're doing in Colchester so that other listers can take it back to their town.
It's very nice to just be in the organization and also see the vendors. I'm also a county delegate for VALA, which is a very important organization. It's the Vermont Assessors and Listers Association, and we do gather bi-monthly and share ideas and also talk about what's going on in the legislature. So it's really great to network.
The workshops offer a broad range of topics, from how to engage a community to how to prepare data and manage records.
Current use is very interesting this year because we've had a lot of changes with the Easy Out program, and also how to allocate excluded land has changed, and so the state's doing a very good job of offering classes to make sure all the towns are assessing it the same way. So, our job is all about fairness and equity, so it's very important that we do all follow the same procedure.
They had the GIS talk already, the mapping talk, so that was really good. Combining the assessment data into a map. We use the same mapping system in Colchester, so learning a little bit more about how to use it was very helpful, and so I'll be able to go back to the town and use it a little bit more in depth than I have been using it.
Bringing together the municipal officials and citizen volunteers that work for Vermont towns in order to make Vermont towns work better. In Stowe, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
The 2017 Town Officer Education Conferences are offered in April at 2 locations. The first is on April 4th at Lake Maury Inn in Fairleigh, and the second conference is on April 11th at the Capitol Plaza in Montpelier. For more information, check the website uvm.edu/extension/TOEC. Joining me now are 2 guests. Brissette Flores of UVM Extension is the statewide coordinator of the Town Officer Education Conferences, and Lee Crone served in the town of Manchester for more than 20 years. He is a veteran of the education conferences and is now a senior planner with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. Thank you both for coming in. Now, when and why did Extension start the Town Officer Education Conferences?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is the 72nd year, as you mentioned. So when we really think about that, that means we're looking at 1945 when the TOEC started. But it was really in the 1960s where a UVM professor of political science really got invested in the town officers' education conferences, and along with VLCT, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And he really felt that there was a need and believed that there was a need to support municipal leaders and address interests of Vermont towns. And really, that is what we focus on today, looking at how we can provide opportunities to network and update on changes in policies happening throughout the state.
Well, now, town clerk or select boards are highly visible positions. Who are some of the other town officers that benefit from this conference?
Of course, we have every year we have listers, treasurers, planners. Whether you're a veteran to municipal government or you're new into a town of position, we offer 20 workshops to choose from. So there really is something for everyone, and you're very welcome to tailor your experience and your knowledge as to what you're looking to learn.
And so, Lee, there's a wide range of positions in municipal government. Some are held by staff, others are held by volunteers. Why is a training helpful every year? What kinds of things change that these people need to know about?
Well, Vermont is unique in that so much of municipal government is managed and run by volunteers. So some towns almost entirely volunteers, some towns more professional staff, but laws change, requirements change, open meeting law issues have evolved over time with social media. Highway issues have become much more complicated. Managing stormwater now, that's not an issue that highway departments or towns have had to manage. Planning and zoning requirements and the legal framework change all the time, so there's always something new to learn and improve in our practices.
And so, Brissette, is there a theme to this year's conference?
Yes, every year we have an underlying theme. This year's Rural Economies in a Changing Demographic Landscape. We're very fortunate to have Paul Costello as our keynote, joining us from the Vermont Council on Rural Development, and he'll be really touching base on his experience in community engagement, how to better interact with communities. We also have a plenary led by Susan Clark from VIG and Slow Democracy, and Leanne Tange from the Orton Family Foundation, as well as Ellen Rowe from UVM Extension, and they're really going to be showing their 3 perspectives of community engagement and rural demographics, and it's really great to have them speak to our theme this year.
What are some of the workshops?
Of course, so we have a large array of workshops. Every year we try to address issues like sewer, water displacement, road conditions. We really offer a large array, municipal mobilizing elders in the communities, so we really offer, whether they're thematic or less thematic workshops, there's something for everyone.
Now, there are a lot of issues that face our towns, Lee, as you were talking about, things like property taxes, local roads, natural resources. Is it fair to say the issues coming before town government today are more complex than they were a generation ago?
Oh my goodness. Dramatically more complex. For example, I'm in the volunteer fire service, and I found a training certificate from one of our former members from 1966, and it was a 45-hour work class to become certified as a volunteer firefighter. Now it's close to 200 hours.
Really?
And so that's just one tangible example of how things have gotten much more complicated. The planning and zoning universe, with new court cases coming down, new requirements, new restrictions. Again, I mentioned managing municipal roads, and now the new municipal general roads permit that's required across the state. That's going to make life much more complicated for communities. So our Regional Planning Commission, for example, is trying to help our member municipalities doing culvert inventories and road inventories to figure out where are the major stormwater challenges and how much is it going to cost a town to fix these things. And so the whole financial aspect of managing municipalities has gotten much more complicated as well.
You mentioned earlier public records requests and the internet. That must be just a whole nother ball of wax.
It's a whole different level of intrigue, interest, and complexity, and depending on who's interpreting the law, you know, is a select board member allowed to go to a party where 3 other members might be there? If they go to someone else's meeting, if they participate on Facebook, is that a lawful exercise? And you know, do you give up your right to participate in community because you're now an elected or appointed official? These are complicated issues, and I wish they were simpler.
Can you give me some more examples of that? I know I did a story with the Shelburne town clerk and converting all their records, updating them to digital, which was a huge job.
Yes, and that's another interesting aspect of the work of a town clerk, for example, is managing records. Their job, they are responsible for all the town records, and we're all used to going into the vault to search for land records, for example.
Yep.
The clerk in Shelburne, as you mentioned, as have many others, have worked to bring things into the digital age and digitize all those records. Again, a fascinating exercise, very expensive, but making those records available more readily in more formats is a very helpful thing for communities.
So how does someone like you, who's been involved in planning, plan for issues like these in the future?
Well, we all, in all of our various professions or volunteer aspects, just try to keep learning, stay ahead of the curve, be aware of what's going on out there, and try to anticipate changes and hopefully stay ahead of them, but it's not always easy.
Have you also seen the role of local officials change over time?
I have. Again, just changing in legal requirements, changing in complexity, changing in rules at local, state, and federal level that all come down to us. We've all heard the notion of, unfunded mandates. Someone else creates a requirement that might sound good in theory, but not always well thought out as to how those of us at the local level actually have to implement those things. So that's where these workshops come in, and just trying to help everyone keep learning, keep interested. As we saw in the little video, folks even who have a lot of experience, they're interested and they want to stay current with needs and requirements.
But there are also some other issues that are a little lighter than all that. I know that there's a workshop called Mobilizing Elders, the Walkability Survey, which I thought was really interesting. You're actually asking people to become involved.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for engaging our elderly community and having them take these walks around the town and really just take surveys on how walkable and accessible their town is. And this is really helpful for planners and to be able to gain some insight as to what changes they can make to, one, engage their elders in accessibility and allowing them to also get out and come in contact with each other and feel more connected as well to their town.
Also, too, some things that have evolved over time. Communities that have bike paths are very popular, and people who are moving to an area, that would be something that they would look forward to or look at a community for. So there's a bike-friendly communities workshop as well.
Yes, and we're really looking at the economic value that it adds to a town to bring in, walkable towns and access to bike-friendly paths, because these are really great activities that will engage your families, you'll engage your elders, any age level and group, and really just, like I mentioned, how it adds to your economic, whether tourism or just having a more connected community. Mm-hmm.
And that's a very interesting issue where, again, life has gotten more complicated but also more interesting, and where these kind of health-related issues, aging issues, are becoming blended into the land use planning realm, and thinking about putting more emphasis on sidewalk connectivity, bike paths. We're all aging, and how do we age in place and help our communities be friendly to everyone? Planners now interact more with AARP and the Vermont Department of Health in some of these kinds of issues, where those alliances never would have been thought of or existed 10 or 20 years ago.
And also, too, there's a new way to do that with drones, and there's a workshop on drone mapping.
Yes, and that's become a fascinating new use of technology, not just what we see socially with people flying drones and taking aerial views, but the folks at UVM have those linked to GIS mapping systems. So whether it's trying to map an accident scene or a flooding incident or sidewalks and parking, it's a fascinating new use of technology. We're actually having a regional planners conference down in Manchester in the fall, and we'll be bringing those folks in to do some aerial parking surveys of the downtown. Because we all have a sense of, yes, I think that parking lot's always full or always empty, but we're going to bring them in and do some drone imagery to see what's the reality of in a busy little downtown.
And Brissette, remind us again when the conferences are.
Yes, we'll be offering 2 conferences in April 4th in Fairleigh and April 11th in Montpelier. For more information, you can go to www.uvm.edu/extension/TOEC.
Okay, well, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.